pass over to you if that's okay.
Uh, Hi, my name is Myles. Um, I'm the founder of Haze. I work in the same office as Fearless Adventures. Um, yeah, what do you want me to talk? What should I talk about, Dan?
I guess it'd be great because we'll do a bit of a Q&A afterwards.
Yeah.
But what we've been doing is kind of just having I guess, a discussion with previous founders as well, just to talk about their journey. I know obviously
Hmm.
you've done your Dragon's Den stint,
Yeah.
well, you've pivoted, I guess, your business from
Yeah.
to Dragon's Den. So I think an overview of your journey throughout Dragon's Den, what that experience was like,
Hmm.
to where you are now would be really valuable.
Yeah. I can give a bit of context on myself. So I am 20 now. At 18, I went to study finance at the London Institute of Banking and Finance. It was within my first year that I started a company called Haze Cards. Long story short, we thought, why is the product you use most so boring? So we started creating metal credit and debit cards. We worked with the likes of Porsche on the beach, the UK's largest holiday provider. And we kind of found a niche that people really wanted personalized and customized items. You know, there's so many products online and consumers now have so many options. And it's just, we really found that people are willing to spend a little bit more to have something personalized and unique to them. So we bought a laser engraver, we did a lot of prototyping and managed to figure out how we could remove the chip off your plastic credit and debit card. And we worked with a lot of manufacturers in China and the UK to build kind of a metal credit card replica where we could transfer your chip and pin from your normal plastic card and turn it into metal. And we offered a service where you could upload an image and we would design that image on your credit card. So we'd use high-powered laser engravers, we'd upload different colors. We built that ourselves, kind of bootstrapped, I guess, with no investment. Learned a lot of lessons on the way, a lot of failures, and we did I think it was £120,000 of revenue in our first 6 months at university, and this was all based out of our university dorm. Bit of a hobby, really. We didn't expect it to do as well as it did. And then in my university library my attendance at university was drastically falling, unfortunately. And I just kind of fell out of love with the course. It was kind of the time where coronavirus was calming down, but stuff was still online and but I became a little bit lazy. I didn't go to lectures and I just focused on the business full time. And then in my university library one time, I applied for Dragon's Den. I don't know why. I was just on the BBC website and it said applications were open, and I was 18 at the time, and I just kind of thought, I'm not going to get through, but I'll fill it in anyway. And it was like the worst application form you've ever seen in your life. Those huge boxes, and I would type like a couple sentences in there, and I sent it off, and I get a letter that says, if you don't hear back in the next 4 weeks, then it means you haven't been selected. So I was like, right, whatever. I forgot about that, and then I had an email from a lady from Dragon's Den, BBC, and she was like, "Oh, we'd like to consider you for the next round." And the way it works is you have kind of 4 or 5 interview rounds with different people, and these are normally like a month gap in between each one, so it's a huge process. So the first one was like a chat on the phone, and then I remember she was like, "Right, if you don't hear back in 2 months and you haven't got through," so then I was like, right, I'm not going to get through. And then the second round, she called me and I was in prep, funny enough. And she was like, what do you value your business? Bear in mind, at this time, I didn't even have an accountant. I was 18, I had no kind of structure around me. And she's like, what do you value your business? I was like, off the cuff, I was like, 100 grand. And she's like, well, okay, so how much do you want for investment? I was like, I want 30K. And I was just in prep on the phone. And she's like, right. So she noted that down, and that stuck for the whole due diligence period. And then after lots and lots of going back and forward, one day she just emailed me and was like, right, Myles, you're through. You'll be in Manchester, you pitch in Manchester in 2 weeks. Come up. And then I was pitching in Manchester on Dragon's Den. I was the youngest person to go on solo. So I was 18 at the time, which is now the back on it is interesting. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy day. I woke up and then you just kind of go to studios in next to where they filmed Coronation Street, actually, and we just kind of roll in, and it was a massive production. I don't know what I was expecting. A massive production. Walked in there, they designed my table for me, got like hair and makeup there, and I was there for like 5 hours, and just in the green room practicing my pitch. And then suddenly you just get called, and then you just walk in front, and you just go and pitch the to the investors on Dragon's Den. And then after that, we only secured 3 offers: Stephen, Tuka, and Peter. And then I went to the wall twice, but they cut it out. On the show, it looks like I only went once, but I went twice. And I really didn't know who to choose, to be honest, because I'd been watching since I was probably like 12. And I thought Peter Jones is Peter Jones. Everyone is like, loves Peter Jones. But then I didn't know much about Steve at the time. But I kind of thought he's more, at the time, he was probably 27, and he's more in the social media space, and he could help my business and kind of help me grow, and he understood. He'd been in my shoes, really. So we accepted Steve's offer. And then, we went through all the due diligence, and then you kind of do the behind the scenes, and we aired on Dragon's Den in February last year, which is a pretty crazy time. It was viewed by 7.5 million people live, another 4 million or so on TikTok. No, sorry, 6 million on TikTok, and then another 6 million on Facebook, the clip of me, which really helps in terms of PR, brand, and we were overwhelmed, really. We probably weren't as prepared as we should have been for the amount of people on our site. And I think the investment really, it wasn't about the money, so per se, or the investment. It was about having the contacts and being able to speak to people who had been there and done it, which was the most important thing, so the most valuable thing. And through that, I kind of saw there was a glass ceiling. The people around me were doing huge things, and I was like, this is not big enough as a glass ceiling. So I decided to pivot. So I decided to pivot to a tech SaaS business, which is a bit of a strange pivot. But I saw the issues that there was by selling complex products online. There's no infrastructure out there where businesses can sell complex or customizable products online. You only have to look at Etsy, for example. They do $15 billion worth of gross revenue on their platform per annum, but it's so difficult to buy a personalized product online. You can't visualize a product, especially in a time where everything is purchased online, which then pushes huge return rates, and then obviously there's an environmental factor there. So I thought, why not build a solution that or fix a problem that I faced at my previous company, which we're doing right now. So that previous company was acquired, and I then, within 2 months before my 20th birthday, we raised money from some of the top UK angel investors in the UK, which is pretty cool. And then since then, we've been building out our tech products, which we plan to integrate with Shopify, Wix, Squarespace, Etsy. And we're currently in talks with some Chinese marketplaces as well, kind of solving a problem there, really. So a huge pivot, but a needed pivot, some would say. And that's I guess that's where I am now. I'm aged a lot in those 2 years.
We do have questions coming through to the chat, but I kind of want to just for a second and go back to a little bit on your story there. You mentioned kind of, you had some big learnings throughout. Obviously, that will be expected. What for you is the biggest learning or your takeaways from building your own company and seeing such success in such a period of time?
I would say structure. When I was 18, even early 19, I lacked complete structure around me. I was kind of all over the place. I'm a thinker, and I think a lot, and I probably lacked I would say guidance in some areas. I was a bit naive. And I think the most valuable lesson is having great people around you, people where you can turn to and go, this is not good. How do we solve this? And that can solve it in without the panic, and can just crack on and get it done. I think that was probably the biggest learning, structure. And then in terms of looking too far in the future, I think you need to focus day by day instead of trying to figure out what we're going to do 2 years from now. I think you should focus week by week, day by day, kind of do small incremental steps. I think it's a big learning.
Amazing. I know we've spoken before, I guess, about the marketing tactics that you used when you first launched. Which channels for you did you find most valuable for reaching your customer?
Yeah. So we manufactured the cards ourselves in terms of the laser engraving. So it was kind of a satisfying process. So we recorded those videos and put them on TikTok. TikTok was probably our biggest platform. It was in the days where it was slightly easier to get organic views because we had no marketing budget. TikTok was our only way, and Instagram Reels back then weren't popping the way they are now, or you couldn't get the traction that you can now. And then when we kind of got a bit of capital, we used TikTok paid ads, so the kind of ads you see on TikTok on your For You page, and then also Meta, so Facebook and Instagram paid advertising. Yeah, and then a bit of organic SEO. We ranked really high on on Google search engine, which was good because one of our competitors, they had, I think it was 2 million followers on TikTok. I think it was about 2 million. Maybe it was around that, and they were doing huge numbers. But when people would search for them, we would come up higher than them, and we were cheaper, so we kind of gained our customers that way.
Amazing. We did have a SEO week. Was it last week? Maybe beforehand. Was there any specific tactic you were doing from an SEO perspective, or do you think it was the volume of content you were able to produce?
I would say the volume of content we were producing. We would always be on product descriptions and making sure that they are the highest standard. As well as just improving things daily on the site, changing wording, keywords, those kinds of things. I would say it's a bit of luck as well, to be honest. We just kind of seem to rank fairly high, fairly easily. So yeah, we use a lot of tools within Shopify. The website was hosted on Shopify, so we used our Shopify plugins, which is a bit interesting now, obviously, because we are a Shopify plugin. But we used a lot of Shopify plugins that were free to kind of gain that advantage on the SEO side.
Amazing. And rather than me hogging all the questions, I'm asking a few from the chat. But if anyone does want to shout out, feel free to jump in. But one we've got is, how did you initially fund the business?
Off my first one, it wasn't a huge. We to give some context, we ran at an 85% margin or a 90% margin sometimes if it was an organic sale, and we sold our cards at from 75 to 109 pounds a card. So we only had to sell a few to be able to push that profit right back into the business. Our kind of biggest upfront costs were a laser engraver. I think it was the one we had at the start was quite cheap. It was a Chinese laser engraver, so it was £1,500. And then, which I used my student maintenance loan, because I lived in London, you get a slightly higher student loan, and I used that excess to buy the laser engraver. And then the cards we put a test order in, and I think they were maybe £5 a card or so on the test order, so not huge upfront cost there. And then the website, as we know, websites can be started for £20 a month or so if you can design it yourself, and we designed ourselves at the start, which obviously had a huge upfront cost saving.
And what platform were you using to begin with when you were doing your web design?
So the first, which I'm not embarrassed about, but this just shows how naive I was or uneducated, was Wix, which is just outrageous now when I look at it now. It was just all I knew. I just saw an advert and I just started with them. But looking back now, Shopify, we migrated onto Shopify later down the line, but our first website I built on Wix myself.
Yeah,
which is incredibly easy to do. YouTube nowadays, I think online, YouTube, you can even hire for some bits. I did the majority myself, but some bits you had a bit of custom coding. So we hired a developer on Fiverr for it's a very small amount to kind of do bits and pieces, but that's about it.
Amazing. And then just a follow-up question, I guess, to the initial investment one is, what's your experience been with working with angel investors?
Yeah, it's a different game. I came from like a bootstrapping background where you spend £1, you make £2, and you put that £2 back in instead of raising lump sums. It is a different game. You need to learn the game and the way it works, especially in the tech side, which is good. Tech angel investing is really active, and if you've got a good idea and a good concept, I would say you should be able to raise. But it's frankly, it's an awful market to raise money in at the moment. It's incredibly difficult. Investors are starting to hold back. I would say having a good relationship with the people you're raising the funds from. We had different routes we could go from. We had offers from some of the largest SAS funds, so they're kind of like the first backers. So we had an offer from one of the most active SAS funds in the UK to back us quite early on, but their term sheet was pretty outrageous, and it was a tough decision, but we declined them, and that would have filled our round probably. And then we decided kind of what do we want from an investor, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. If angel investors are the people who come with you from the start, and they were the people that will support you along your journey, hopefully to acquisition. And I think we wanted people that were in the trenches with us, that were proactive. So I look at the people who have invested in us now, and a lot of them are, they're slightly older, they've got a bit more experience, kind of maybe they have the things that I lack. So, they've got quite large networks, connect people in high places in terms of manufacturing, tech expertise. But I would say relationship is the biggest thing, kind of having that bond. A lot of them, a lot of angel investors that we have now, I will drop a message and be like, how's the tennis going? Or, just asking about their personal life, just so you kind of got that relationship. It's not just corporate, that they're people at the end of the day.
And just to provide some context for people there, so you were mentioning SEIS, and when you're raising investment, if you've got an early stage business, I believe it's within the first 3 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Myles.
Yeah, seed enterprise investment scheme. There's two of them. There's the SEIS, which is a scheme set up by the government, and so is EIS. But SEIS is so you can raise up to 250,000, and I believe it's the first 2 to 3 years of the business being active. Around that, I might have skew with that. 3 years of business being active. Yeah, and it's a great scheme set up by the government, and it helps kind of push UK investors to be more active, and it can be only used for UK capital. And EIS is used for slightly bigger investment rounds, and you get less tax relief. But yeah, it's both two great schemes.
Yeah, so with that SEIS one, everyone, so for an angel investor, they get 50% back on their tax bill, don't they, at the end of the year? So they may make a £20,000 investment, 10,000 back. So it's a way of getting angel investors active and investing in small and new businesses like yourself.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not a bad deal.
Yeah, it's quite well. And then a few more. So before Haze, I guess, obviously you've pivot. But before Haze version 1, did you try any other businesses? What kind of got you starting in the area?
Not really. Not really. Haze Car was my first business, I would say, and it wasn't a business at the time. It was a bit of a hobby, and then it just became a business over time. It got more. There was more structure behind it. There was more, I guess, genuine data-backed decisions were made. At the start, it was kind of just deciding what we wanted to do, any day. There was no data behind it, and then slowly became a bit more structured.
Amazing. Kind of, I guess, going back a little bit, Jake has asked how important scalability is in the business, because I know you pivoted because you felt that there was that glass ceiling. Are you able to a little bit more information on, I guess, the scaling side and why you pivot?
Yeah, so the first business, in terms of scalability, it was incredibly difficult because you had to handle people's cards. So there's a scalability issue in terms of like how many cards can you physically manufacture per day yourself, and you can't really outsource it to a manufacturing company because it's data issues there, security issues. So there was an issue in terms of like logically how many cards we make a day, and over a year in terms of an acquisition, what would that look like? And there was a glass ceiling there. And I kind of wanted to run a larger business, I would say, with more potential, and a slightly bigger team size. Scalability is everything, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. And what advice would you give someone starting a product business then from scratch, from nothing?
I would say proof of concept is everything as well, especially in a time where raising funds is so difficult. Testing and trying that product and getting customers' feedback is everything. Being able to understand what problem you're solving to the customer and what that product will do for the customer and why that customer would genuinely purchase that product, not just because it looks cool. Like, what does it serve compared to the other products out there on the market? Especially price point, especially in this economic environment, where how your price is incredibly important, especially against your competitors. So I would say try and test different price points, usability features of the product to make sure it's genuinely what people want and that people are willing to pay for it. And I think fail fast, fail cheap and fail fast, and then learn from that so you can adapt and kind of rebuild for the cheapest way possible and as fast as possible.
And without I don't want to give anything away that, we can't give away, but one of the questions is, where's the business now, and how do you see it progressing? And obviously you have had that pivot. Are you able to give any information on the current stance of the business?
I should be able to give a little bit, yeah. So we are a couple of months off integrating with Etsy, worldwide, Shopify, and a pretty large, hopefully, if all goes well, integrating with a pretty large Chinese marketplace. We have a fairly sizable fairly small developer team, full stack and back-end developers. Yeah, I can say that. I guess I can say that.
Are you able to give context what the new business is, or is that?
Yeah. So it's a product configurator plugin that integrates with kind of Shopify, Wix, Squarespace, which enables businesses to sell complex products online without the need for coding a custom portal, I guess. And so in terms of our manufacturing side, there's huge return rates because customers don't know what they're ordering, and they can't preview the product. So a very basic example is kind of like Vistaprint. You go on there, you design a jumper, for example, and you'd upload the logo, and you can preview what the logo looks like on the jumper, where on Etsy you can't do that. And they have sky high return rates, and the products, because they're customized, can't be recycled in terms of can't be resold. So we're kind of solving that problem. And then hopefully build a couple other apps under that brand is probably my long-term goal. Maybe create a group of SaaS applications is probably the longer-term goal.
Amazing. And some people have been doing their homework. So a quick question here is, how has your granddad given you words of wisdom kind of in terms of business when you're growing up?
Yeah. No words of wisdom from my granddad. None at all. He didn't know I was on Dragon's Den until after we'd filmed it.
Really?
Yeah.
So just so everyone knows, he puts it in the chat there, but your granddad's David Dickinson from Bargain Hunter, isn't it? Bargain Hunter.
Yep, he is.
Amazing. And then one we've got here is, what would your business strategy be for a startup B2B service provider?
Startup B2B service provider. I would guess in terms of I'm guessing that's like a location-based business in terms of in a certain city or area. I would harness the likes of like Facebook. I always find these businesses super interesting, and I think Facebook communities are super interesting. There's huge potential if you can, like, for example, my mum, she loves Facebook, and she's on these kind of Manchester group chats in terms of there's other mums on there, and every day they're asking for painter recommendations, cleaner recommendations, and there's no B2B service providers on there, and that is such a good market. You can go there, market your services, and it's free. So I would say kind of get on Facebook and get in your local community and just get out there. I think there's a lot to say for like scrappy entrepreneurs where they just like crack on. It's probably a lot of people try and push like the work smart, but I think it's absolutely bollocks at the start. You just kind of need to get yourself out there and kind of get to know your customer and what they want, and then kind of solve that issue. I think the biggest takeaway here is kind of, what problem are you solving and why would they pay you for it, and why are you better than other people out there?
And how have you found that pivot, I guess, then from being a product-based business moving to a software business?
Stressful. It's a different world once again. It's different people in there. Luckily, I had a fairly decent amount of people around me that had already been in the tech space and that kind of held my hand at the start. But a lot of learning, a lot of talking to people, like most days, talking to other founders that have been in my shoes, and learning from them. I spent a lot of time with kind of like the older people who have kind of created Shopify apps or created SaaS apps, and just kind of trying to pick their brains, asking lots of questions and learning from their failures. Chief technical officers, learning how they started off and the pitfalls and where to find developers, where the best developers are. It's just kind of asking a lot of questions and trying to network. LinkedIn's a big godsend. Like a year and a half ago, Dan will know that I was in the office and I was like, what the hell is LinkedIn? It's cringy posting on LinkedIn. Why are you guys on LinkedIn? And then I set it up. I think I was like, what happens if I don't get it to 500 connections? It's just going to look weird. I set up and I did a couple of posts, and then suddenly within like a few months, I was like, there was so much value by talking to people on there. It sounds so ridiculous at the start of it, but being able to just like drop a message to someone who is a project manager at one of your competitors and discussing different ideas, it's so valuable. And I've met, a lot of our angel investors we found on just by dropping a message on LinkedIn. It is so valuable. So I'd say get yourself on LinkedIn as well and just kind of keep posting on there. It's free. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed about you, Myles, as well as you kind of get to ride the wave of that PR piece that you have through Dragon.
Yeah, it's incredibly valuable. 100%.
That's what, using what you're given and what you've managed to put yourself out there to help build those networks. And I can imagine the pivot into SaaS that's helped that you've managed to now kind of cultivate a following on LinkedIn. Build a name to yourself. Chloe, I can see your hands raised, so I'll pass over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. It's really impressive that you're on Dragon's Den at such a young age. That's really amazing what you've achieved. My question is about how you would narrow down a bunch of business ideas. So I'm constantly thinking, constantly coming up with different potential business ideas. So like, let's say you've got 10 different business ideas. What are the questions that you're asking? What's the thinking process that you would use or that you have used for your two businesses to narrow down to this is the one that I'm going to go for?
Yeah, great question. And I've definitely been there where you kind of got like 15, 20 ideas, and one day the idea seems amazing, the other day the idea seems awful. I would say kind of narrow it down as much as you can. So I think 10 is a pretty good starting point. And I would go through them and kind of look at different competitors and see how they're doing. And if they're not doing very well, I would probably question the idea. And I would talk to a lot of people as well. Talk to your customers, talk to the people you're trying to sell to, and logistically, how feasible is the idea is probably where to start off with. And where do your strengths lie? Like for me, though I am a techie, but I'm not a full techie. But one thing I do know is I know the problem we're trying to solve really well. When we looked at kind of what to do next, I know the problem. I've been the customer of the business that I'm trying to sell to now, and I know that how they're feeling and know their thoughts, and that is my strength. And I'm good at managing a team, and I'm good at kind of getting the vision across, and that's my strength. Whereas if, for example, if you're really good at TikTok, social media, Instagram, video editing, then I would probably go as a physical product and I would push TikTok ads, I would push social media. But if you're really good at kind of talking, communicating, I would go sales, kind of more a sales business. I don't know if that helps really. If you can provide some context, I can probably give you a better answer. But
that's also useful. And I'm also just wondering, like how you would compare like a high ticket and low ticket business option. So if you're selling a product that only costs say £10, is that a bad idea because you've got so many, you're going to have to fulfill so many orders, there's going to be so many say customer inquiries to deal with versus trying to just go for the business ideas that's really high ticket and it's a low number of people to have to deal with?
Yeah, so my first business was high ticket. Well, we sold two products. We sold a metal wallet, which was laser engraved. It was around the £35 to £40 mark. So, that's kind of like a mid-ticket item. We also sold £100, around £100 product. So it's fairly high ticket. And we found that we were quite lucky. Our margins were massive. So we could spend a lot of time talking to the customer. We could spend a lot of money on ads acquiring that customer. I would say you have to look at a small ticket. At the start, it's going to be incredibly expensive. I mean, incredibly expensive to scale because you're going to have to spend loads of time, and customers like to talk to the business. So at £10 ticket, you may have to talk to a lot of those customers, and you're going to spend huge amounts of time, and you're going to need a huge amount of product to be able to generate any actual sizable income. But then on the other hand, if you build up slowly, it's all about the margin. If you can build up slowly, and I would say that is the best way to do it, a smaller ticket item is probably best. If that gives any clarity. High ticket items, you've got to have a lot of brand, and they can be incredibly expensive in terms of upfront cost. And if it goes wrong, it may take it may be incredibly expensive if it fails. Whereas if it's a small ticket, you can fail fast, and there's probably a lower startup cost. Meaning,
yeah, no, that's a really good point
meaning
about
more
the
agile.
potential loss.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is being as agile as possible at the start, where if it's a small ticket item, you can kind of pivot, and don't be scared to pivot. There's a lot of, I would say, a bit of stigma around pivoting. It doesn't mean the business has failed. It just means you're trying to serve a different market, or you've realized, oh, my customers don't like this item. We're going to throw away 1,000 units and we're going to pivot to a different item. I think especially when you're starting, a smaller ticket item is probably easier.
Okay, yeah, great. That's really helpful advice. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
And then I can see you've got your hand raised as well. If you wanted to jump in.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks, Myles. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing all the information. It's very useful. So my question is, so I'm currently looking to launch a supplement brand for women.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, you probably know, the supplement brands, there's huge minimum orders for like those businesses. What advice do you have about approaching angel investors and how to and where to get in touch with them? I know you mentioned a little bit about LinkedIn, but what is your approach been? To find angel investors that are obviously suitable for the business.
I've got a friend who was in your shoes not long ago. He started a supplement brand, and he had huge minimum order quantities. He's actually here right now, to be fair. And the way he started off was, he is incredibly good at TikTok, and I believe he did pre-orders, and he did the TikToks where he's really good at TikTok. So that was his kind of skill point, and that was his free expertise. He created TikToks. They were all organic. I think he did really slow and a really low pre-orders, managed to gain the capital, and then he put up front to prove the concept to investors. And now he's raised money from angel investors because he's proven the concept with a small batch of units. You don't need to go ahead and raise straight away without what's the word? It's very difficult to raise straight away without a proof of concept, especially in the physical product market. If I were you, I would try and private label some of the products and get a really good brand out there. Here we go. So, for example, this is the product here that he's done. So he created it all himself, and he proved the concept first for as little money as possible, and pivoted, and then he went out and showed angel investors on LinkedIn, and he approached them and showed that he had a proof of concept and customers that were already willing to pay for it, and that if he could get these minimum order quantities, he could provide the product at a lower cost, which then he pushed TikTok and Meta ads. LinkedIn's a good place, but LinkedIn's great, and it's incredibly difficult if you don't already have a brand on LinkedIn. I was lucky where I already had Dragon's Den, so I kind of already had something about me prior. So if you've got something that kind of shows a proven track record, I think it's incredibly important. It's probably way easier, is a better place. And then I think angel investor events are really good to go to. And I don't know where you're based, but there's lots kind of all over the place in the UK. Some great ones in London, some great ones in Manchester, some in Nottingham as well. And if you kind of just get around there and get chatting to angel investors to understand kind of what they're looking for, especially in the supplement space, I would say as well, when you're approaching angel investors, especially pre-product, and it's a physical product, I would say be quite lenient on the valuation. You shouldn't. A lot of people get quite protective over the company valuation and how much they give away on their first round, but especially when you're starting so early, I would try and get a lead investor on it and give them a fair chunk of the business. Just because the aim is that you get the money in, you get the product, and you prove the concept. It's all about proving the concept to the investor, especially the supplement side, if that makes any sense. But I would try and go private label, prove the concept on TikTok and Facebook, and then approach angel investors. But trying to going to those events, there's loads on LinkedIn. If you type in kind of angel investors, they're free to go to, and just kind of get chatting and find out what they're looking for in their investments, I would say.
Yeah. So I'm based in Manchester, and we do have a concept in the sense that so I ran ads to a landing page to see how many people would convert and actually sign up for the waiting list for first product. The problem I have is the product itself is a custom formula. So it's a brain supplement, so I can't just get like white labeled stuff because it's custom formula. So it's a specific formula that we've kind of formulated for the actual brand, which is proven to work for like obviously the things that we're looking to target. So I have been creating like TikTok ads and TikTok videos and stuff like that, and that's put people through. Would the signups be enough, do you think, for angel investors, or does it need to be like pre-sign up, so people actually giving money rather than just signing up to say they would like this product?
I think that's a difficult one. I already know your minimum order quantities are going to be absolutely outrageous, first off. And I'm sure you already know that from manufacturing. There's going to be a huge upfront cost there. Especially if you wanted to go kind of informed sport, that kind of thing. I would say sign-ups are difficult because, especially when they're from paid ads, is a proof of concept, but then it's also that customer hasn't had to give anything away to sign up. You know, we had 10,000, for example, when we went on Dragon's Den, we had like an offer page, and when you load on the website, you'd put your email in and you'd get a code for an offer. We had 10,000, I believe it was around 10,000 people sign up for that email. Obviously, all those 10,000 people didn't convert. Only a small minority of those people converted. And it's the same kind of thing. You know, we can't use those statistics. There's 10,000 people signed up for an email, but they didn't convert anyway. So the data there is really difficult. Yes, it shows interest, but it doesn't show that people are willing to part with their cash. Yeah. I would say it's incredibly difficult. Angel investors, if you find the right person that truly believes in the product and truly believes it has traction, has legs, then they could commit to a small ticket. But it's going to be really, really difficult to raise lump sums, so kind of like in the six-figure range, when you don't have that kind of small proof concept. I would almost say your timeline is going to be quite long. So you could do a pre-order, but then obviously they could be waiting 2-3 months. So yeah, grants are really good. I've just seen that Dan's put a grant in there. And there's lots of kind of women in startup events as well, where there's lots of incubators and accelerators for those kinds of things. Yeah, I think it's a difficult space to be in. I would try and build a bigger brand organically as possible on TikTok in terms of posting content about the brand and the benefits, and try and build a bit of a following on TikTok, kind of giving advice. And then that does kind of show a bit more of a proof of concept that people are willing to follow and people are interested in this brain supplement or whatever it is probably the best way. But it is an incredibly difficult market, as you know. That's
great. Thank you so much. Just what's the brand that your friend was starting?
Overload. Overload. Yeah. He if you look at it, actually, to be fair, he's quite a good example in terms of building a brand prior to product. And he built quite a sizable following on TikTok, where that when he approached investors, he could already say that people were engaging with the product. And, you know, he raises around fairly swift. So we can reach as many minimum order quantities.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your help.
No worries at all.
Thank you.
Perfect. And then just one more that I can see in the chat here is, what skills would you say entrepreneurs starting a business are seriously lacking at the moment?
Entrepreneurs skills. Sorry, repeat the question. Sorry, Dan.
So what skills are entrepreneurs lacking at the moment?
What skills are entrepreneurs lacking at the moment? I would say willingness to kind of just crack on and get started. I know that might be a bit of an outrageous one, but I think there's a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, that are kind of playing around, and they playing around with the business, you know, trying to that like the business lifestyle, that they like the idea of running a business, but don't want to crack on and just kind of get out there and test the market. I think is, you know, the biggest thing is just to kind of get cracking and get started. I would say there's a lot of kind of people playing around in the market and in the space. Prancing around is probably a better way of putting it. There's not enough action.
Yeah, and
too much talk.
Just to add to that, and Chris, I think it might help a little bit on your answer, as well as a little bit of what you were saying as well, Naya, is I always find that a good place for early entrepreneurs to start is looking for accelerators. And I know there's a fair few of them around Manchester And with a lot of these accelerators, you'll get on for a 6-month program, and they'll be there built for pre-launch businesses, and they'll help you through the process of kind of setting the business up, getting pitch ready. But also they have a great bank of like people and a good network to help make introductions. So I'd look at the local area as well if you're Manchester.
Yeah. And I would say, just off that point, Dan, is, you know, a lot of people, the first kind of thoughts when they are starting off is like fundraising. And yes, you do need the capital to start off, but from being in that place where you get the capital, especially at such a young age, the biggest thing for me, being at such a young age, but also having no experience in the sector, the biggest thing and the most valuable thing looking back was the ability to drop a WhatsApp message to someone and go, look, Joel, you've been in this situation. What is the best idea here? What's the best thing to do? And that kind of feedback and that that support is so invaluable. You know, it's worth more than cash. And kind of having that network around is so important. So I would try and find like-minded people in your area that are doing the same thing, and just have a chat and kind of exchange ideas, and you never know what that will spark.
Amazing. Is there any more for any more, or is that everything from everyone? And if not, are there any closing thoughts from you, Myles?
Not really, no. I think if you've got an idea, go out there and get after it. There's some great, especially in the UK at the moment, there's some great fundraising programs and kind of business startup programs out there, and there's just so much knowledge that you can get that's free. So if you've got an idea, I'd say just try and get out there and pursue it, I guess.
Perfect. And I'm kind of speaking on your behalf here, but I'll throw your LinkedIn into the chat for everyone.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, drop me a message.
Yeah, perfect. Well, cheers.
Okay, great.
Time, Myles.
Thank you very much. Hopefully I managed to give a bit of a different perspective. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Amazing. See ya.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.